Welcome, everyone. My name is Lori Wood, and I'm a certified family law mediator and divorce specialist coach. I've been in the family law industry for 30 years, helping people navigate divorces and the emotions that come with them. Today, I'm here with Shannon. Shannon is a client who's graciously agreed to talk to me about her experience going through a divorce before, during, and after the divorce process. She's bravely agreed that no topic is off limits and has agreed to answer any questions that I ask. So thank you, Shannon, for being here today and being a part of my podcast.
I'm so excited.
I'm so happy.
I'm terrified, but I'm excited.
No, we're just two girls having a conversation. It's all good. We're going to get right into it, though.
Yeah.
I know that from both personal and professional experiences, just how stressful, overwhelming, and even traumatic a divorce can be. There are so many emotions that come with it, and they can be really difficult to deal with or even to move past. We can get stuck. Going through a divorce, we can really feel alone and feel like we have no support system. And the person who was our support system or our biggest cheerleader or our rock is no longer that person for us. Yeah. So, and I've found in my 30 years of doing this, when people come in more often than not, the person is never on the same emotional page as their spouse or former spouse.
Of course.
So our expectations of why aren't they feeling this way at the same time, it doesn't happen and can be very confusing. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to have the conversation today, and I wanted people to know they're not alone and there is absolutely support out there and available if they need it. So we're going to dig in. And I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. And we're going to start with really easy ones. Okay. And then we'll just build from there. And if anytime you get uncomfortable, you just kick me under the table because nobody can see. So tell me how long you were married.
So married for 6, together for 12.
Okay. It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. And if you were asked during your marriage what your marriage looked like or what kind of marriage you have, how would you describe it then?
Oh, gosh. At the beginning, I think caught up in the, oh my gosh, I'm a wife now. I've graduated, right? I'm no longer the girlfriend. I mean, we were together 6 years before we got married. So it was this upgrade. I don't know why it was supposed to feel different, but you're like a wife.
And you're all grown up now.
Yeah.
And it does feel different.
And so to be, about to hit 30, and then just realize, wow, we've grown up together, for 6 years. And so.
And having that 6 years before it, you're together, you know each other's good, bad, ugly. Yeah. But somehow, some way, when you have that marriage certificate where you go through the ceremony, it changes everything.
Yeah.
But
also it was a big, I think it was more of oh my gosh, I'm getting this upgrade, but really what was really different, right? I mean,
our expectations.
Right. And so I think that so many people talk about that, right? You're together and then you get married and now people are going to stop hassling you about when you're going to get married and when you're going to have kids.
Right.
When are you going to get grandkids?
They always want to know when you're doing the next step.
And so I think it was a little bit of a disappointment because it was it got harder.
Sure.
It was kind of oh, I thought this was supposed to be the start of all these new experiences, but oh my gosh, that first year of marriage was the absolute hardest of our relationship.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And is it because you found that people were putting more pressure when you decided to marry and that was your upgrade and you had these expectations, and why wasn't that just enough in that moment?
That paired with, we both had basically started, I wouldn't say new careers. He was starting a new career. I was starting a new job, and it was a really big job. And so you get married and then are faced with what are the changes that my marriage is now going to face, but then also you're starting a new job, a new career. And so where's your attention? Where it wasn't in the marriage.
Right.
It was on our careers. I mean, honestly. And so it was really difficult sort of navigating how different was marriage supposed to feel when we're both married and work.
It's crazy how much we're supposed to try and balance these things.
Yeah.
And when we're doing a lot of things and we have to work and we want our relationships and we're married, but how do we balance that? You can't do everything well or great. So where your priority goes is where it's going to flourish. And sometimes, not intentionally, the other parts suffer.
Well, it was we were together for so long that it was what could we screw up?
Right.
Really, what could go wrong? Because we were able to focus on our careers. And so it was like the marriage itself, it's kind of like it's almost like you stop working on the relationship because you're like, oh, we're married now. It's fine.
Yeah.
Now it's time to like really focus on our careers because that's what's going to take us into our old age so we can retire.
Right. The deal is sealed. We work together because we're committed and we were
now we're together forever.
Yeah. So now it's no matter what happens, we're good. We're solid. Yeah. And that's fortunately.
Yeah, the marriage certificate says it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. So now looking back, I mean, I know you've been through the divorce process and we'll kind of talk a little bit about how you got there and what that was like. But would you define your marriage the same way? I mean, you have admitted that the first year was the hardest that your guys' priorities were work. And that's what we're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. We get up to this age and we're told to focus on our careers and work real hard and plan for the future and retirement and all that stuff. So it's very easy not to highlight our marriage or do that. Looking back now, is there anything different or would you describe it any differently? And if not, that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hindsight's 2020, right? And while you're in it, I wouldn't say like you convince yourself it's okay, but in that moment you think, okay, like this is normal or this is what it's supposed to feel like. And then sort of doing this retrospective on the relationship and the marriage, it was like, I thought about it and like, it was so much worse, I think, than I was maybe able to admit, or maybe it just was because just how the marriage ended, going back and highlighting a lot of the negative stuff. But there were so many times that, I would reflect back and think like, oh, we really didn't even have that great of a marriage. We probably had a better relationship prior to, and like the marriage it's not maybe what changed it, but our relationship was okay before that. It just was like, once we got married, it just was, the relationship just declined. Totally declined.
It's interesting. I have been helping people with divorces for a very long time, almost 30 years. And I get people that come in all the time and they were together for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years before they got married. And the marriage is done after 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of always boggled my mind, but there is something about that marriage contract. I don't know if people, because when you're in a relationship, you're working at it.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of sense that the other partner can choose not to be with you or can terminate it, or you can bail at any time. When marriage, maybe people feel pressured that there's not that escape hatch or whatever, or they just kind of give up a little and think that we're married now. It doesn't matter what I do, or they take the other one for granted. I don't know. I'm curious as well, AF, to find out the dynamics. And I know for every client, it's different. Every person going through a divorce is different, but it's always fascinated me how you can make a relationship work for so many years when you're choosing to do so. And then you get a marriage contract that says you have to be together and people implode.
Yeah.
So if it's okay with you, I know that the beginning of divorce or finding out that you're getting a divorce, if it's not your choice, is one of the most life-changing and difficult things that you can go through. Can you touch on kind of how yours came about, how you found out you were getting a divorce?
Yeah, but it's so interesting to think back on it now because, I mean, my parents have been married for, almost 40 years. His parents are still together.
That's
so
amazing.
This model of marriage has always been very like, you don't get divorced. Like that was never on the table, right? And so even through all the stuff, it was like, I was willing to sacrifice my unhappiness. And this is where the waterworks come in.
That's okay.
Talking about this, but it's like it just doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like, because for so long, my ex and I, we had been, I guess, quasi-separated in the sense that like he had moved out of our home. And for months and months, it just was not him coming back. And during that time, there were a lot of questions of like infidelity, right? And so that was a big reason as to why we had separated, in the first place. Nothing had been confirmed at that point, right? But there was a lot of speculation and questions. And so I think to get to a point where we hadn't brought up the D word, during that time. And so it was like, okay, we can make it through.
I was going to say, were there still expectations that even though the separation of
I thought he 100% would come back.
You guys were still going to mend it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But it started out as, I'm going to go stay at my parents' house. I just need a few days. I'm gonna, maybe, stay out here another week or two. And then that turned into 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Like he just wasn't coming home. And so it was like, okay, again, like we haven't said the D word. We haven't talked about ending it. Let's try to date each other again.
Right.
And so by the time things kind of imploded, I guess, where he had actually attempted to move back home and tensions were still so high. And I think he moved back home. I think it was 5 days. And we had this just blowout fight. He ended up, leaving, going back to his parents' house. And that's when, again, the tensions about the infidelity were so high. And there was so much proof and like just so much that I was sitting on that ultimately I did confirm, right, that this person that I had been suspicious of, they were actually seeing each other. And so I don't know how much I want to go into the whole, anyway, but I confronted him. Your comfort level is
the most important thing.
Yeah, I confronted him. And so really at that point, I think it's so dumb. I still thought, okay, we can still get through this.
That's not dumb. That's not
and
dumb.
You feel so stupid thinking that. I'm sitting here, I'm confronting him and this woman, in person.
Wow.
And I'm driving home and I'm just thinking like, okay, like I'm going to really have to like work on forgiving him. Like that should not be your first thought.
But you know, it was.
It was relentless for me. I was like, we're not, why would I get divorced? Like people don't get divorced. I don't get divorced. There's a stigma. It is gross. It is dirty. People that fail get divorced. And so
I think that you're not alone.
I was still thinking, I'm going to sacrifice my unhappiness to salvage the marriage. And so we didn't speak for, probably a couple of weeks. And then, or maybe I'm trying to think of the timeline. It was something where basically he got caught. He was super defensive and said, I don't know if it was out of rage or I'm pretty sure he said it in the moment, but he was like, whatever, it's over. Like, I'm going to file for divorce. And so of course, in that moment, you think like, I don't even really I feel like I blacked out at some point during that time. So there's a lot that's like fuzzy. I remember how I felt,
right.
But I was still thinking again, like, the D word had never come up before. So why all of a sudden
are we going to come up then?
Yeah. We had never, that was never something that we threatened in our marriage.
Right.
When we tried couples counseling or marriage counseling, I think the most we talked about, right, was we don't want to get divorced. We want to work on this. Right. And so, it was like a day or two later, we met up and it was where he had already said, I called my brother had a referral which is you.
Right.
He had a colleague or something, I think that had used you as a mediator. And so it was like, I felt like it was like a 48-hour weird wind tunnel of chaos. And he had made the appointment and I show up to your office and we joke about like the shell of a person I was when I showed up.
Right.
But he was never like the emotional person, but for me to show up, I couldn't even look you in the eye.
No.
I couldn't look him in the eye. I just stared at my hands.
It was quite a first meeting. Meeting.
And he had said something like, I think he would ask some questions about, what was the date of separation?
Right.
And what he had answered was, it was, January of, I think, 2020 at the time. And I was like, wait, what? I'm sorry. We were like officially separated in January. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you just moved home in July. Like, what are you talking about? So I remember just feeling so blindsided by, he clearly had such a different, perspective or point of view on what the status of our marriage that I was like, I'm sorry, did I not know we were like officially separated as of this specific date in January? And I remember that's just what shut it down. Because I said, that's ridiculous. And I don't even remember what we talked about. It was all a blur.
Yeah.
And I couldn't talk to you until I think later that day. I called you and I said, so sorry.
You did.
I was like, I was so emotional. I don't remember what you said. I remember I had to pay for something and, I had to pay for it because he didn't. And it was just this whole thing. And I was like, what were your questions? Like, I just blacked out. Like, what are we doing?
And I'm so glad that you called me that day. And I applaud you for sharing that. And first I want to go back a little bit and say that you have these two role models, your parents, his parents, married 40 years. That's what you knew, that people, no matter what.
Grandparents, everybody.
Yeah, divorce was not what you did in your family.
Yeah.
So for you, at your own sacrifice, to say, I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
That's not dumb.
Yeah.
Number one, that's what you were ingrained to do.
Yeah.
And number two, wow, to stay so committed to something, even when it may not be the right thing for you, is brave, not dumb. So never feel dumb. I have to remind you.
I know that now. But
But then again, the perception, and when you came into my office, I don't know, except for what people tell me on the phone when they set the appointment. And we usually gain more information when they come in and we sit down and we all talk about this. And I remember he got here first and you showed up a few minutes later and there was just a certain tension in the air. And I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
But then you came in and you did not look at me and I'm thinking, oh, she's pissed, which is, I totally get this. The divorce emotions have nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do the best I can. I think I handed you something to review and you whipped it back across the table.
I was like, sure.
Sounds good. Okay. So the meeting went as good as it could.
Yeah.
And then you were so gracious and brave to call me later and say, I'm sorry, which you never needed to apologize, but you kind of let me know.
Yeah.
Why your emotions were what they were. And so it made a lot of sense. And then I think we talked about me being the divorce coach and if you needed help with those emotions, and then that started a beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
My opinion of a beautiful relationship. And I'm so thankful that it did. But it's interesting. And we kind of touched on this in the beginning that during your marriage and during your divorce and even after your divorce, it's very rare that you and your spouse are on the same emotional page.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're sitting in, I think that we can resolve this. A lot of times they've already checked out.
Yeah.
But nobody's communicated it. Expectations are like opinions. We all have them.
Yeah.
We never communicate them. And when we do, it's, I expected you to this, or I needed you to do that. And the other person's way on a different page. So they say about opinions.
I think I even made you change the date of separation to the day before or something.
You did.
I was like, no, that's BS.
Yeah. And
I wanted on record that what we call the date of separation, it was 2 days ago.
Right. And clearly the date of separation should be something that's communicated with both parties.
Right. Because I was like, wow, so you gave up in January and here I am still thinking 2 days ago we were going to, make this work. So that's just where it was like, wow, we actually have an 8-month difference. Talk about not being on the same page, not even being in the same library.
Yeah. And so I'm not an attorney. I don't profess to be. I won't give legal advice about that data separation, but I do remember it was important to you to change it. And in my humble opinion, it should have been changed based on the facts described. So after the initial shock wore off and that 48-hour, wind tunnel, as you said, and just the blur of it all, did you feel it just changed your life, everything you live with, what your finances were going to look like, maybe where you were going to live, who your friends were? Did you feel like you had a support system that you can confide in?
Yes. And I think the best part is I always had a really strong support system, but I think also sadly my ex wasn't that person anymore. He hadn't been for so long. And so I relied on other people.
So you had even before this happened?
Oh yeah, because through the separation, I didn't have him. Yeah. When he was apart, and this is what I think dredges up a lot of the emotion.
And I'm sorry, and you're doing so great.
But I think this is why you can sit there and say it's not raw. It'll always be raw.
It absolutely will.
Because how many times have I come into your office and I've been like, oh, let me tell you about the amazing things that's happened in my life. I'm so happy this is behind me. But to go back and I think relive that trauma, to say, this person was my person for so long, but they stopped being that person. When he moved out and I felt so abandoned that, I had the animals to take care of, the house to take care of. I was the breadwinner in the relationship. And so I was still working. I was still trying to make sense of everything and try to hold it all together. But he wasn't that person that I leaned on. And I think that actually caused some rifts a little bit in our relationship towards the end, because he stopped being that person. And I don't think he knew that. No. He would see the way that I would be with my sister. He would see the way that I would be when my best friend came over. And he would say, things like, I just don't understand why you can't be that person with me. You're always so happy when they come around, but then you're left here with me and it's like, you just hate me. And
that's a dangerous place to be.
And I just remember thinking but a big rift in our marriage right now is that you are not there for me. You're not there for me emotionally, physically, in all ways, you stopped being that person. So I think the loneliness or the feelings of abandonment, I mean, it was a little bit easier, I think, for me because I had already, I think, leaned on my other support system, and so they became the people that I think, I mean, I always say unfortunately, but I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm really sad today. You're going to get the brunt of it, so just a person to listen and just to give advice. And, it wasn't even about like just BS positivity of like, it'll be okay. You'll get back on your feet.
Right.
It was just like,
sometimes you just need that
curse
person to
and
listen.
say all the bad words and cry and scream and here's more wine. And like, we'll fight through these feelings together.
And whatever you need to do. And, it doesn't have to be a traumatic event that causes a divorce or one person does something. And just a little bit about me, I went through a divorce many, many years ago, and he's a good guy. And we just got to a point where it was just no longer working. And my personality and his would change when we were together. We weren't our best together.
Yes.
So I brought it up. I made the decision to do the D word, and it was looking, what I thought at the time was a mutual decision. And even though I brought it up, and I've been doing this for 30 years and I know how it goes, I lost my damn mind.
Yeah.
My poor mom, God rest her soul, got called day after day after I moved out, and, blah, blah, blah. And so she's like, finally one day she said, you made this decision. You need to be okay with it.
Yeah.
But I think having that support person, just somebody to listen, is so important. Now, for me, I didn't want to explain it to everybody, so I changed hairdressers. I changed nail people. I just didn't want people to look at me with that, oh, you're getting a divorce kind of pity thing. So sometimes we have this great support system, but we don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing everything about us, or don't want to change their opinion of the other party, or... So, that's one of the reasons I am a coach. And if people need a safe place that's non-related, or, sometimes spouses' roles change and they can still be interactive with each other, and we don't need the whole family to take sides. So outside of your support person, and this is not a plug for me, but is there anything that you found helpful in getting you past, because you suffered real trauma, not just the divorce, the infidelity, the shock of how you found out that you guys were on two separate pages, being told, be here on this day and not even really knowing what our appointment was for, and then going through the process, which when all the stars align is difficult in itself. So going through the process, what do you think now is kind of most helpful? Because there are days that you just absolutely shine, and I know life has gotten better. There still will always be pangs. I still have pangs. It just is part of it. And that truly to me means that you were so committed in that relationship, that you valued it so that when that ended, you're mourning. And you're going to mourn.
Grieving a lot. I always tell you, like, I have to treat it like a death.
Absolutely.
That's the only way that I know how to, I think, get through that. We don't share children. There was no kids that were part of this marriage. And so I think that's a different factor, that we don't have to have that connection,
that ongoing contact.
We don't have, there's not like we're we have to co-parent for 18 years or whatever. It's just, I think that made it a lot easier to just shut him completely out of my life. But even with my support, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know other people that were like me. I didn't know any, I'm in my mid 30s, I didn't know anybody. All of my friends have been, they all got married in their, early 20s, had their kids, moved back home and raising their little families. And, that just wasn't me anymore.
That's amazing to me, because I see the opposite. Everybody I know is divorced.
Right. And so I think that was what ended up being really helpful, because it was, I think for me, the way that helps me process is, I think, to know, like, you're not the weird, like, oh, you're the only person who's divorced at 36 or 35, I guess, at that point, right? And you're just like, no, like, you're like probably one of whoever, right?
Right.
But to me, like, it was such an unknown, where I just didn't have divorced people in my life.
Yeah.
And certainly no one my age. I definitely had single, like, friends that, hadn't been married yet, and are in their 30s, but I think it just was where you could relate to me, I think, in a sense of, like, you're not the only one, you're not alone. Like, I wish that you could, like, talk to yourself now, right? Like, I wish I could go back and talk to myself and say all the fears that you had. Oh my gosh, you're going to laugh, because you're going to, you and I kind of started our, ongoing
journey.
Yeah, I want to say relationship, and it sounds
No, we do have
a beautiful relationship.
That's right, our blossoming relationship.
Right, but I think that's just where it just was like, I think you just would say things like, I'm telling you, Shannon, like trust me, it's gonna get easier though. You're gonna wake up one morning and you're not gonna want to cry. Or you're gonna wake up one morning and you can, do A, B, and C.
When you're in it at the time, you can't see past it. And then I've always said this, and people get so tired of hearing it, those emotions are so temporary.
Yes.
But we make permanent decisions based on them.
Yeah.
We change our life based on them. And if we can just, find a safe place or somebody to listen or somebody to help us find tools, and we white knuckle it through till one morning we wake up and go, I feel a little less sad today.
Yeah.
I feel a little more like me today. Or I'm going to take this as an opportunity to invent the person that I want to be.
Yes.
Divorce it's traumatic, but it doesn't have to be so devastating. We can turn it around and go, okay, now I have an opportunity to be in complete control of my life.
Yeah.
Discover what makes me happy, because a lot of times we forget. We're so focused on the us that we have no idea as a single person or even an individual what the hell is going to make us happy or what even we like to do anymore. And so to turn that into an opportunity to go, wait a minute, I can do whatever I want in this world is kind of.
I feel like I had asked you, or I think I was sad or crying, and I just was like, I said something like, "Who's gonna want me now?" Like I'm damaged goods, right?
Oh,
and I feel like again, it's just one of those like, geez, Shannon, like how pathetic that it was like that was like the woe is me, like who's gonna want this now?
Yeah.
And then so it took me a little bit, I think, to turn it into exactly that. Shannon, you can do whatever the hell you want now.
Right?
You can eat. Maybe sometimes I'd eat ice cream in the middle of the night, but it was just like this thing, like you can dance naked in your house and, blast gangster rap and just, middle fingers to the sky. And it's just like, I can do whatever I want.
And the amazing thing is you're going to want to do those things.
Yes.
Now, I've been known to take a gallon of ice cream with a spatula and go to my room in the middle of the night. And, it's a wonderful thing when nobody judges you.
I don't have to be responsible for anybody. I don't have to be a mom. I mean, I feel like I've heard so many women say, or just the dynamic of I feel like the stereotypical like male-female type of relationship, right? It's like you become a second mom. And I was so tired of taking care of other people. And I just wanted to take care of myself.
And you should. And you touched on something. We get married, and this may be a generalization, and I probably shouldn't do it. But as women, we're caretakers.
100%.
And so our role, or what we've been taught, and those roles are changing, and it's up to the individual to decide what role they want or how they want to live their life in a relationship. But we take care of our husbands, or we take care of the responsibilities around the house, or we take care of the bills, or we take care of the children, or we take care of the family. And so often we feel selfish for taking care of ourselves. When we could be better wives and better mothers and better employees and better bosses and better friends if we just took care of ourselves. And half the time we come out of this, and it's maybe not even our choice to get divorced, but then we're sitting there and we have no idea what to do because our roles, we were so busy caring for others, we don't even know what caring for ourselves looks like. Yeah. And I remember that day that you said that. And I'm thinking, if you could only see what I see. And I think now you do after I kind of tried to beat it into you.
Oh, yeah. I treat myself like daily now. Like it just was those things where I did little things here and there, but it was always like the big stuff. I felt like it was always in service to the bigger things that my ex wanted, or that he had to have this specific truck and he needed to have this motorcycle. And it was all these things that I felt like he was building to have this great life for himself. But when it came to me, it was like, I'd buy a shirt here and there, or, some makeup, or, of course I'd go on, I'd have girl trips or whatever, but nothing crazy, And so I think it just was kind of this, I don't have anyone else to please. If I don't want to do that, I don't have to. And if I have the money to do this for myself, awesome.
And who are you hurting? I mean, and it's amazing. And it's not like you're going out there running amok, and damn it, if you do, who cares?
Yeah.
But it's very easy. I mean, a divorce, the end of a relationship, a breakup of a long-term relationship, it can't not take away our confidence. I mean, women are held to such standards. If you're not size 2, if you're not this, if you're not that, and then for somebody to not want us, or for us to feel like we're not good enough to make it work, even if it's just our physicality that we're feeling judged. I mean, it's just awful, the pressures that are put on us, or maybe that we put on ourselves. I don't know, but it's very normal. I know, even though I was the first one that uttered the D word, I felt less than. I felt unattractive. I felt like a failure. I mean, I knew what to expect for a divorce, and it knocked me on my ass. I would go to work every day helping people divorce and telling them they can get through it. I'd go home and lay on the bathroom floor and bawl for an hour and call my mommy. I mean, you just can't help but move through this.
Yeah.
But the papers have been final.
Yes.
The divorce is done. We're post-judgment now.
Mm-hmm.
You have turned into or come back to, because I believe you were always inside this beautiful soul, beautiful on the inside of the outside, this strong, confident. I always call you kick-ass Shannon. You're kick-ass Shannon. You can do whatever you want. And it's just been a privilege for me to watch transformation or be even a small part of it. And before we close, because I know we've just sat here and gabbed, and I could do that with you all day long, post-divorce, we have little pangs and we feel a little trauma still. But what does post-divorce look like? Have you thought about dating? Are you dating? What does it look like? Tell me the juice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like when I was kind of saying the feelings of like, oh, who's going to want me now? And like, you look at these like stats on paper where you're like, oh, I'm 35 and I'm, out of shape, or I, like, gosh, I haven't dated somebody in over 12 years. Like, you're just like thinking that was what was overwhelming to me. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, dating apps were not a thing when I got together with my ex.
It's such a new world.
We met organically through friends. And so I think that's what scared me, because I had heard all of the horror stories from my friends, but I would say it was a bit of a roller coaster in the sense that it was terrifying, but oh my gosh, it is so much fun. I'm having a blast. I'm just like, because I feel more empowered in, so many sacrifices or feelings that I had where I always took the backseat in the marriage. And I'm in a place where, I can say no. Like if somebody they don't possess the qualities that I'm looking for in something short-term, long-term, whatever it is, like you get to go back and be like, no thanks. Like I don't deserve to be treated that way. Or,
just know.
Or just to know like what, and just how much I feel like I put up with, I guess, in the marriage, that I just said, these are just some of the things that are going to be non-negotiables. And through dating, I was seeing a guy for probably a month, and he was at the point where he was like, you're my girlfriend. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like, well, I don't have a boyfriend, like, unless we're going to have that conversation. But, he went as far as saying like, well, you're my girlfriend. He, got me a few gifts and whatever. And then, we had this like or he had texted me and just said something about like, I feel like you need too much communication. And I'm thinking, wow, like, because talking to you once a week isn't really doing it for me. Like, I don't care if we don't get to see each other that much, but communication is a big thing to me. And I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, wow, Shannon, you're so needy. But having to switch that mindset and think like, no, like that doesn't make me needy. That just means that I didn't have great communication in my previous relationships. And that's something that's really important to me. I don't need to talk to you every second of every day, but I also don't think that if you're going to call me your girlfriend, talking every 3 to 4 days, that doesn't really do it for me. Like,
I love that. He started, somebody's opinion started to make you question yourself.
What was wrong with me? What was wrong with me?
And then you were able to turn it around and go, no, wait a minute. This is just what I require. And if you can't give it to me, then we don't
I really liked him.
Here.
There was a lot that had potential there. But at the end of the day, it was, if this is really going to be like what it's going to be like, then I don't really want a part of that. And so I'm willing to sacrifice that, right? I don't want to see this through, because if I already know that I'm not going to get the communication that I need and that I desire out of a relationship, then it's not worth it to me.
And I love that. And so many people waste time, or they stay in relationships without ever clearly communicating.
Yes.
And I feel like, to go get a driver's license, you have to read a book and take a test, and you have to pass this. In a relationship, we just jump in, and we all have expectations. We place our expectations, our opinions on others. But the downfall is we never clearly communicate it. So we're just sitting in silence, judging the other person because they're not doing what we expect them, need or want them to do.
Yeah.
So if you could sit down and interview each other or have a questionnaire that is mandatory when you're ready to commit to someone, that the expectations are on the table and you can give somebody the option. This is what I need, want, and expect from you. Are you capable of doing that?
Yeah.
Because if they don't know, they're never going to meet your expectations and you're setting yourselves both up for failure. I do marital mediation all the time and no topic is off limits. Let's talk about sex. You may need it 5 times a week and he needs it once. Well, shouldn't we talk about that?
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't you tell him that you need to have communication and not just, I'm going here, babe. I'll be home late, babe. How was your day, babe?
Yeah.
You know, in-depth conversations at a minimum, however often you need them. But if we don't tell people what we need or want, how can we expect them to do that? And I think you are so brave and so awesome. And I hope that other women listening to this not only realize they're not alone.
Yeah.
That there is help out there, whether it's me or somebody else they feel safe with, and can turn the I don't feel good enough or what was wrong with me or what did I wrong.
It's not the end of the world.
No, it's the end of your marriage.
Yes.
And it's the beginning of a new beginning.
Yes.
And that beginning is whatever you want it to be.
And guess what? There's a lot of divorced guys out there.
I think one more question.
Yeah.
Before I go. Now, I haven't been online dating, and I think it's a fantastic tool because where the hell do you meet people these days?
Yeah.
I also know that there's people who post pictures when they're 30 and they're actually 70. And there's a lot of crap going on out there. But when do you tell someone you're divorced? I mean, it is in your bio. Do you lead with that?
Yes. I mean, I would say that obviously I'm just seeing the male perspective of the profiles, but a lot of men do disclose that, but there's actually a lot who don't. And what's interesting is I feel like it becomes, when I've had the conversation with the other person, it's kind of like our dirty little secret that we are not sure how to say it, but then the other person says it or you bring it up and then you're like, oh my God, oh thank God, I'm divorced too. Like, like I wasn't sure if you were, but I am. And, and I think when there's children involved, I think that's a different dynamic.
Sure.
Especially with me not having children. So I think men are probably more, at least what I've seen is that they're definitely very open about having kids and maybe if they want children down the road. But the divorce thing, I think is still, there's like that. It's like you want to destigmatize the divorce because to me, I felt shame for so long.
I did too.
And just he wanted to divorce me? Like, oh, really? Like,
on one hand, your ego is so big. It's like, are you kidding me? You're divorcing me. And then on the other hand, you're like, how could he not want?
Yes.
I mean, it's this awful place that you vacillate in between. And I know that divorce is taboo. It's almost like what pot smoking used to be.
Yeah.
You go on a date and if you smoke pot, you don't want the other one to know you smoke pot until somebody says, and you go, oh God, me too.
Yeah.
But
the circumstances are always very different. I think context is everything. I mean, I don't know if there's ever going to be a guy that would come forward and be like, well, I cheated on my wife and that's why we got divorced. But the men that I have gone out with and we've had the conversation, I mean, I've had very surface conversations and very in-depth where you actually are really like, wow, I felt the exact same way. Like, thank you for being vulnerable enough to tell me like what a dark place you were in after, because I was there too. And then to be able to speak and say, but look at us, we're on a date now. Like, how crazy.
And it truly, traumatic events bond people.
Yeah.
And every divorce case is different. Every bit of property division and circumstances behind it are different, but what's always the same is the emotions that follow.
Yeah.
And it's how we move through them, how we conduct ourselves during, that really determines how we move forward in the future. And so I know that we've talked again, and we could talk for hours on this. And I would love to have you back and kind of explore the post-divorce dating. And, you give me the juicy secrets.
This
again.
is when I stop crying.
Yes. See, this is the dirt. Maybe we'll have a glass of wine or something sitting next to us instead of coffee next time. But I can't thank you enough for being here and for being so vulnerable. And as I said before, it's just been a privilege for me to just witness the Shannon that returned, the kick-ass Shannon that I've come to just adore. And I'm so glad you're in such a better space. And now I'm getting teary. Now's when my waterworks comes because I'm just so proud of the woman that you are. And I'm not meaning that in any way other than with love. So if I can be of service or help anybody else who's going through a really tough time, I am happy to do so. You can find me on Facebook at Lori Wood Spears, whatever Facebook hashtag. I'm old school. I still have a paper calendar. You can call my office at 916-616-6191 or find me on Instagram at Bugs Nana, because my grandbabies are everything. And yes, I'm old enough to be a Nana. We'll just leave it at that. But thank you again for coming in today. I really appreciate you and I adore you.